So picture this. You're on a plane cruising at thousands of feet. The guy sitting next to you, he sees a news alert pop up on a screen, and he just turns to his wife and says, "We've lost everything." A second later, in the state of just pure panic, he's begging the flight attendant to open the doors. That right there, that was the exact moment the lie hit home for just one of the thousands of victims of the man we're about to talk about.
All right, let's get right into it. Because that moment of utter desperation on an airplane, it was all caused by one person, Bernie Madoff. This is the story of how one man built a financial empire that was, really, when you peel it all back, the largest and most destructive Ponzi scheme in modern history. A lie so big it would eventually be worth a staggering $65 billion.
But here's the thing. To understand how a lie gets that massive, you have to understand the man behind it. See, for decades, Bernie Madoff wasn't some shadowy criminal. Nope. He was a pillar of Wall Street, a visionary, a financial genius. For thousands of the world's wealthiest people, he wasn't just a safe bet. He was the safe bet, the absolute safest place you could put your money. I mean, just look at this trajectory. It is the perfect American dream story, right? He kicks things off in 1960 with $5,000 he saved up working as a lifeguard. By the 70s, while everyone else is still screaming in trading pits, he's one of the pioneers of the computerized trading that would literally become the NASDAQ. In the 80s, his firm is a beast, handling a huge chunk of all trades. And by the 90s, he's not just playing in the big leagues, he's the chairman of the NASDAQ. He was the system. And you know, what's so telling is how people talked about him back then. The Wall Street Journal in '92 called him a master and the bane of the old school New York Stock Exchange. Think about that. He wasn't just some suit. He was seen as a game changer, a respected disruptor who was making markets more efficient. The old guard feared him and the new guard loved him. That's a level of credibility you just can't buy. So Madoff had this huge, totally legitimate, and very respected trading business. But that wasn't where the magic happened. No, the real action was happening one floor below, on the secretive 17th floor. This was his investment advisory business. And this was the part of his company that seemed to perform actual miracles. And of course, he had a secret formula. He called it the split strike conversion strategy. Now, it sounds super complicated. And honestly, that was the whole point. The idea was you'd buy a bunch of safe blue chip stocks and then use options to protect against any big losses. It was just plausible enough, just technical enough, that his wealthy clients would nod along and think, wow, this guy's a genius. And this number right here, this is what it was all about. For almost 2 decades, his fund claimed it made an average of over 10% a year in, year out. But here's the truly impossible part. It never had a losing year. Not once. Not when the market crashed, not during recessions, nothing. Just a smooth, steady, beautiful line going up. It was a money machine that basically defied gravity. And this quote from an investor just nails it. This whole thing was built on one thing: trust. Absolute, unshakable trust. The returns were incredible, sure, but it was the reliability that sealed the deal. You needed cash, you got your check in a few days, no questions asked. For decades, he never missed. That built this fortress of faith around him. On top of all that, Madoff was a brilliant marketer. You couldn't just find him in the phone book and invest. Oh no, you had to be invited. You had to know someone who knew someone. It was the ultimate exclusive club. Getting in wasn't just a financial move, it was a status symbol. It meant you were on the inside. People were begging to get their money in, which meant they were terrified of ever being asked to leave. So while his investors were living the dream, cashing their checks, some people on the outside, financial analysts, competitors, started to get this weird feeling. The numbers, they were just too perfect. The whole operation was like a black box, and some people started to wonder what was really going on inside. The whispers started. And the first big question was the most obvious one. How? I mean, really, how? The market is messy, it's volatile, it goes up and it goes down, that's just how it works. But Madoff's returns were like a perfectly straight line drawn by a robot. No one else on Earth, not the smartest hedge fund managers, not the quants with supercomputers, could even come close. How was that possible? Then there was the secrecy. Look, if you're a big institution and you're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars, you do your homework. It's called due diligence. You check the books.
But whenever anyone asked Madoff to see his trading records, he just shut them down. He'd basically say, hey, if you don't trust me, take your money and go. It was this incredible bluff that used his own stellar reputation as a weapon, and it worked. And this was the real head-scratcher for the pros. The strategy he claimed to be using wasn't a total secret. Other people could try it. But here's the kicker. Nobody could get the same results. In fact, people who actually ran the numbers realized that the trades he claimed to be making, well, there weren't enough options in the entire market for him to actually be doing it. The math just didn't work. For years, those questions were just whispers. They were easy to ignore when the checks kept clearing. But then came 2008. A global financial tidal wave was about to hit, and it was going to smash Bernie Madoff's perfect little world to pieces. The great unraveling had begun.
You know what's so interesting when you look at this chart? For decades, it was all so stable. The money coming in from new investors was pretty much balanced by the money going out to people making withdrawals. It was this smooth, predictable flow that let the whole machine just keep on humming.
And then this happened. This is the moment the engine seized. In 2008, the whole world economy had a heart attack. Everybody panicked, everybody needed cash. And they all started calling Madoff to get their money out, not because they were suspicious, but because they just needed the money. And that trickle of withdrawals suddenly became a tsunami.
And we're talking about a massive amount of money. As the crisis got worse, investors tried to pull out $7 billion. But here was the fatal flaw, the secret at the heart of the machine. The machine was empty. There were no stocks, no options. The money was never invested. It had just been used to pay off earlier investors. He didn't have the $7 billion. He was trapped. There was no more money coming in, the demands were piling up, and the walls were closing in. So Bernie Madoff did the only thing he could. He went home to his Manhattan penthouse and got ready to tell his family everything.
He sat down with his two sons, Mark and Andrew. Now, they worked in the legitimate trading part of the business, totally in the dark about what was happening on the 17th floor. He told them he was having trouble paying out the money people were asking for, and then he dropped the bomb. The money is gone. His wife, Ruth, was there too, and her reaction tells you everything you need to know about how insulated they were from the truth. As he tried to explain what he'd been doing all these years, she had to ask this one simple, devastating question. It shows you his own family had no idea. And then came the full confession. It wasn't just a bad investment or a temporary problem. The entire investment business, the thing that had made them rich and powerful, was a total fraud from the very beginning. As he put it, it's all been one big lie. His sons were completely blindsided, just stunned. They left the apartment, talked to a lawyer, and made what must have been the most agonizing decision of their lives. The next morning, they called the FBI and turned in their own father. On December 11th, 2008, Bernie Madoff was arrested, and the biggest financial lie in history finally came crashing down. But of course, the arrest was really just the beginning of the next chapter. This massive, years-long effort to untangle decades of fake trades and try to claw back some money for the thousands of people he'd ruined. So let's just break down the final numbers, because they're mind-blowing. That $65 billion figure, that was the fake number on everyone's last account statement. The real amount of actual cash that investors lost was closer to $19.5 billion. And for that, Madoff got the maximum sentence possible, 150 years in prison. Now, trying to clean this up was super complicated. Basically, the court divided everyone into two groups. You had the net losers. These were the true victims who put in way more money than they ever got back. Then you had the net winners, people who, over many years, actually took out more money than they put in. The court actually sued them to claw back those fake profits, so the money could be given to the people who really lost out. And honestly, this number is incredible. After more than a decade of digging through records and fighting legal battles all over the world, the trustee in charge of the cleanup has recovered over $14 billion. It's actually one of the most successful recovery efforts of its kind. A small bit of good news in an otherwise terrible story. But you can't measure the real cost in dollars. The human devastation was just profound. Madoff's own son, Mark, took his own life exactly 2 years after the arrest. Entire charities that did incredible work just vanished overnight. Families lost their life savings, passed down through generations. And a name that once meant trust and genius became the literal definition of fraud. Which leaves us with this one big, haunting question at the end of it all. Yeah, Bernie Madoff was a master liar, but he didn't do this in a vacuum. He did it right in the heart of the most sophisticated financial system in the world, which for decades looked the other way. So how could a lie get this big, for this long? And what does it say about trust, about greed, and maybe about our own willingness to believe in something that just seems too good to be true?